Hey everybody, it's Ben Fung with UpDoc Media, and today we have the 10 most popular job market and career questions. How do you not burn bridges when it's kind of time to transition out of a job? Well, first off, you want to have this conversation earlier than later. You want to let your employer know, hey, look, there are opportunities I'm looking for. Maybe what is the future, or what is my future in this company? And if there isn't something necessarily there for you, is to be as transparent as you can with them that you have plans to go elsewhere. That way they have as much time as possible to plan for the transition, and you can even offer that. Now, certain states, there's something called at-will employment, which means you can leave at any time, they can fire you at any time. In those cases, you just want to be a little bit more sensitive to what may or may not be your and their need and find kind of a balance point in between. Otherwise, it's a good etiquette to allow for at least the planning of a transitional period. And that transition is what's going to keep the bridge standing or burnt to the ground. Number two, I should just work for whoever is going to give me the job, take the first offer and go, because there's debt to be paid and that kind of stuff. How picky can a new grad be? Well, honestly, you can be as picky as you want to be. This is your career. This is your career launch. So it's on you to make sure that you find the best match for yourself. It's not just about the pay. It's just not about the setting. It's not about the mentorship. It's about all of it. What makes the most comprehensive sense for you? Two examples. One is, call it the moneymaker new grad, right? Is able to find and balance a couple of jobs and then go into, say, 4 or 5 months out with a 6-figure salary. On the flip side, taking kind of a pay cut compared to the job market, but having the ideal setting, like the dream job, and after a year or two, they can consider transition, whether it's within the organization or outside. Okay, number 3, how do I stand out in a resume? Understand that the resume is the objective qualifier that you fit the bill of this job position. You need to explain that in the very first couple of segments in the first page of your resume, and after that, usually the second half of the first page is how you kind of show who you are. Who are you as a person? What are your interests? What are your hobbies? What have you done outside of stuff that's directly related to your career? Now, if you only have stuff directly related to your career, that's fine. What you need to do is expand on how that makes you a little bit more human on paper. Everyone's gonna have a lot of, humble brags on the resume. What you need to be able to do is convey that you're a person. Number 4, what things in general can a new grad play up to show that they're competitive in the workspace? Honestly, it's exactly that. I know more people in management that are looking for new grads than they are looking for experienced, seasoned clinicians. And the reason is new grads are pliable. They haven't been set in their ways yet. So what you really need to do is show that you're the new grad that is ready to learn, ready to join the team, ready to fill the shoes no matter how big or how small they may be, because you want to help the team win. Number 5, there's a comment shared that it's unfortunate that there's not much opportunity within healthcare. At least that's what it's apparent. And the thing is, there's a lot of hidden opportunities, especially with larger organizations where they may or may not be allowed to expand on every possible career path. It's on you to explain this away to make some meaningful connections, whether it's at the first interview or maybe within the first year of your tenure within this organization, and let them know that you're interested in the future here. So maybe there's a leadership track, maybe there's a clinical specialty track, maybe there's a business administration track, maybe there's a data science track. Whatever the case might be, you have to express these interests early and also understand that moving up corporate rungs requires a lot of lateral transfers as well as climbing each rung. Some of this stuff is based off of just career life cycles. Others is based off of opportunism, on how willing you are to move up and move around, sometimes around the country, to get these job opportunities landed at your feet. Number 6, are there some key questions at an interview that you should be asking? You should always ask a question. Whenever they end an interview, they always ask you, hey, do you have any final questions for us? Always say yes and name what that question might be. There's a couple of go-tos you can do. You can ask about, hey, what does success look like to you for this department? You can also ask about what are some future opportunities within the organization. You can also ask about the history of this department. Why is this job open? And how can you best fill these shoes to alleviate the most amount of pressure from your immediate supervisor and the team at large? Showing these efforts shows a general attitude that you're willing to grow into the organization and fill the needs. And that's a very favorable place for you to be, both as an applicant/candidate, but also sets you up for success within the organization down the road. Number 7, when is it or is it even too early to reach out and express interest? Answer, it is never too early to express interest in an employment opportunity. What you really need to do is demonstrate your intent to apply. Now, sometimes companies will have a portfolio built for you and you'll just compile it until it's complete and then your application is ready to go. Other times they want it all in one lump sum. The most important thing is to make that human connection with whoever the hiring manager or maybe the HR recruiter or the HR manager might be. That way you at least have a relationship. And from there you can build on that relationship, network within this company, and then finally land that interview after the application is submitted. Number 8, let's talk about the money. Is it appropriate to talk about money? What about reimbursement? What about just general reimbursement? Is this even going up? You can always talk about just about anything in the interview if you do so respectfully. I know a lot of owners that are very open to talk about what the reimbursement rates are because that directly reflects on what your salary is gonna be. And it's fine to bring up a number first. It's fine to bring it up second. It depends on where your position is and what cycle you are within the negotiation, which is kind of a whole separate talk. But to also answer the greater question, is there going to be a time when reimbursement goes up and salaries goes up and all that kind of stuff? And the answer is probably, and probably within the next couple of iterations of this healthcare market, which are happening in cycles that are closer and closer these days. And it has to do with value-based care. The government and payers are both looking for happy, healthy patient populations. And more likely than not, with the first couple of tests of how this will play out in the job market, you're gonna see that companies that can retain clinicians that deliver on healthy, happy populations of patients are gonna be getting better revenue based on these value-based parameters. And that's gonna yield interest into finding and creating competitive compensation packages that keeps the best people, keeps the best talent, and keeps the best systems in place to groom this talent. And you can see how this becomes a positive snowball. And that is where I see the first wave of matriculation of value-based pay affect us positively in the salary front. All right, number 9. This question starts with the caveat that they understand that the job market is very regional. There's certain places that pay very well because reimbursement is better and there's, generally higher cost of living. So with that in mind, is there a way to negotiate during the interview without coming across as too pushy or entitled or anything negative? And the answer is absolutely yes. You need to be able to negotiate based on your unique value proposition, just like anything in any kind of marketplace. And this is where the wonderfulness of marketing knowledge is understanding what your unique value is, what pains can you take away, what gains can you make for this department or this owner or this clinic or even this hospital, whatever the case might be. You need to bring these 3 things to the table. These 3 things will comprise your unique value, a position where you can then say, hey, look, by bringing this extra value, by contributing this new value, is there a way for us to be able to meet at a higher level of compensation? Many times, the answer is yes, it's a business decision. Other times, at an organizational level, they are locked into certain HR requirements where they're only allowed to pay so much for certain requirements such as experience, company loyalty, and certifications to certain degrees. So whatever the case might be, the worst case is you ask them very respectfully and politely and they say no. The best case is you get your counteroffer. Win-win for everybody. All right, number 10. Do you see the pendulum swinging back to company loyalty? And I alluded this a little earlier with, I think, question number 8. And the answer is yes. With value-based pay, companies are gonna wanna try to keep people for as long as possible because they're gonna be investing a lot of dollars and a lot of time and resources into developing the best teams possible to create the best value proposition to payers, to patients alike. Now, when this occurs, you can see that there's gonna be incentives for people to stay because you're gonna create a conglomerate of value when it comes to providers. This cluster of providers does really good work for these various clusters of patients. It's gonna be difficult to prove this value if the composition of these cluster of providers constantly rotate in and out. So there is gonna be some kind of pendulum swing. How much and how quickly? Well, that's just gonna be the job market. The job market is gonna have to define that for itself, just like any other kind of open market. And there was a side comment in question about burnout. There's a lot to be said about working a 40-hour work week or 36-hour or 32-hour or 40 plus or 50 plus. And really, balance and burnout has to do with passion and purpose. I find that a lot of clinicians work many, many hours and do just fine. They aren't burnt out at all because the work isn't work. It's more like play. It's meeting that passion and purpose of why you became a clinician, why you came into this job market. And when you have that lined up and you're surrounded by engaged and inspired individuals that want to do good things and good work for people, you're not going to burn out because those things are aligned. But when your passion is one way and the purpose you're told to do, voluntold to do even, is in a separate direction, that's when you see burnout. And it has very little to do with how much you're working. It has to do with how you're working. It doesn't have much to do with what you're doing in the clinic, but why you're doing it. And if you're finding yourself burnt out, I recommend two things. Number one, talk to colleagues or talk to a mentor. Number two, talk to your immediate supervisor and let them know, hey, look, I think I'm feeling a little burnt out. And owners and managers and directors are more than welcoming with, hey, let's solve this stuff together. Now, sometimes you'll find that it has more to do with your internal life struggles. It may have something to do with your home life. Other times it truly is something happening at the workplace. It could be a workplace dynamic. It could be some changes in even as simple as the EMR system. Whatever the case might be, make sure you have an open conversation and an unthreatening, non-hostile conversation with your immediate supervisor or somebody that is within that employer of choice conversation, and start unraveling the reasons behind it. Burnout is at an all-time high all across healthcare. I think some of it really has to do with where healthcare has evolved to, and I think some of that is also going to be solved with value-based care. The rest of it though is just where the general economy and culture of healthcare economics have gone, and we need to solve this within ourselves and for ourselves, because ultimately we are our own consumers as healthcare providers. So that might be opening slightly a bigger can of worms, maybe for another UpDoc perspective. So thanks for joining me with the top 10 questions Q&A about the job market. I'm Ben Fung with UpDoc Media, and I will see you next time.